This podcast is a casual conversation about mental health. All topics discussed are based on our own personal opinions and should not be interpreted as professional advice. If you need assistance with your mental health, please contact a healthcare provider. Look at this mess that is my hair.
Look at this mess that is my life.
Same though, hold on.
I drank this whole coffee.
Yeah.
And I want more, but yesterday I drank 2 coffees and I had a panic attack.
No, that's not good.
No,
sensitive
I'm to caffeine.
Next time you say that you're going to drink a second coffee, I'll say no.
No, but sometimes it's fine.
No.
With the first time that we did a podcast, like our test episode, I drank 2 cups of coffee and I was great. And I want to have energy. And I'm sitting here and I'm just like, yeah, mental health is so important.
It's fine. We're doing great.
It is what it is.
We're drinking our water today because I didn't do that yesterday.
We are doing great. Yeah, this is not water. It had ice in it, so that counts as hydration.
There you go. You got something.
So do you want to do a little 3, 2, 1 and then introduce us?
Yeah.
Well, I imagine the theme song will go right here. Right.
Yeah.
Here.
I'm overstimulated. Expect the long-awaited abolition of my brain.
But if mentally we synchronize, despite what we despise, there's a chance that maybe I won't go insane. Welcome to Mental Sync.
Welcome to Mental Sync. It's the only show where we drink too much coffee for the amount of anxiety that we have and not enough coffee for the amount of depression that we have.
Facts. Hi, friends.
Hi, hey everyone.
I'm Emily.
How's everyone? Oh, that's Emily. I'm John.
Yes. How is everybody today? Wait.
How are you doing?
Waits for
Let
answer.
us know in the comments how you're doing, and we'll get back to you in 40 minutes.
We'll just leave silence. Just leave silence there.
We're still working out how to introduce the podcast and open these things up because it's weird. Because we've got the idea in theory, and then we get to it, and we're like, "Hi, good morning,
Yes.
everyone."
Yes, and it's like we've
Very
already
strange.
been talking to each other for like 30 minutes, so then
I think that's part of it. I think we need to maybe not have like a preemptive 30-minute conversation.
this is a fact. Because then we're like,
before the
hey,
podcast.
hey,
And
friend.
we're like, hey, but we're already like half an hour into our interaction.
Yes.
So maybe we just need to say hi to each other.
Yeah.
Forget the audience. Forget all these people listening. That's not who we're talking to. We're talking to each other.
Anyway.
I'm so tired.
So, yeah, I feel that. Like,
Oof.
yeah. If I didn't have caffeine today, I would have probably been like, tomorrow, let's do this tomorrow.
Yeah, I was really close. I was really close to saying, oh, let's just do this tomorrow. But again, I think it's probably, I don't know, could be interesting to be in a meh kind of mood.
Yeah.
While talking about how to navigate the meh mood.
Yeah. On that note,
Yeah.
you know what I want to talk about today?
Tell me.
Relationships.
Relationships.
And you know, here's why. Because when I logged into Facebook today, I received a memory from Facebook. And it was from 8 years ago.
8 years ago. Well, that's so a long time ago. What was it?
It was me and you. I think it was award. I think we got an award that night, like different awards.
Yeah,
But
that was like the senior awards night.
yeah, this Time Hop. Remember Time Hop?
I have a feeling this is, oh God, yeah. It was a while ago.
I just
whole
would like
thing.
to add, because in this moment, I've realized that this means we've been friends for 12 years. Because if that
Is
was
that
senior
true?
year, we met freshman year of high school.
Oh my God.
12 years.
Wow. 12 years.
That's crazy.
And what a 12 years it's been. And that's kind of one of the things that we wanted to talk about today in our relationship is long distance friendships. Because although we've known each other for 12 years, we have not been constantly in contact
This is a fact.
for all 12 of those years.
Yeah.
Plus,
we live in different cities, and
we do live in, and what city do you live in?
I live in the best city on earth, and it's Boston, Massachusetts. I should play the clapping for that and the booing for yours.
That's fine. Well, I live in the best city in the universe.
Oh, okay.
which
Oh,
is New York
sure.
City.
Go ahead.
But yeah, even when we were still in Connecticut, you know, I was at college at University of Hartford. You were
In
doing
Boston.
something, I'm sure. In Boston, that's true.
In the best place The best place on earth.
Yeah. But I don't know. There was just we would go a long time without talking for no reason.
Well,
Not, you know.
I would say the reason.
Well, okay. Not for no reason. It wasn't a motivated.
Yeah.
Of talk.
It wasn't
like we weren't ignoring each other.
Right.
We just had shit going on.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in high school too, like we went from pretty much seeing each other daily in high school.
That's true.
Because we would always make like time, like, you know, midday, I'd like go by your locker or something. You know what I mean? Like
we would.
Yeah.
But even in high school, like toward the end of high school, I remember there was at least one period where we were just like, hey, like how's it going? We haven't our circles hadn't like crossed recently.
Yeah, and we also came from as if we were like birthed from different circles. we did though. We had different circles. So
we did have different circles. Yeah.
So it was an interesting
I actually remember one day, this is a weird story, but oh god, I was in Spanish class, I think, and I just remember I was supposed to get a ride home for that day, and I just hadn't. I was like thinking of like, oh, maybe I'll text Emily, and that was in the last period of the day, and I was like, I didn't text Emily, I didn't ask, and like the day was ending, like it was about to be over, and I was like, she may not like see my text. I don't remember the reason why I didn't just text you. Yeah, there was either, I don't know if you could hear that.
I did, but I loved it.
Terrific. For whatever reason, I didn't text you either because there was an actual reason or I was morbidly curious about our psychic abilities. And I went to my locker and I remember just sitting there thinking just like, Emily, go to my locker. Emily, go to my locker. Emily, come to my locker. And we hadn't seen each other. Like we hadn't hung out in like, it had been weeks. And I specifically remember you coming to my locker and being like, hey, are you good? And I was like,
it worked.
Like I just felt this weird need to come into your locker. Like, is everything okay? And I was like, I need a ride home. And you were like, oh yeah, sure,
yeah. Sounds about right.
So we're linked.
Yes.
And that's before we were even on the same meds. So
this is true.
Who knows what it was?
So, yeah. Wow, I love that story. That's
a great
probably
story.
one of my favorite ones.
It's a good story because it's about us and our brains.
Yes.
But other things I think we can talk about are being long distance friends with, you know, each other. Yeah, but like as two people with various mental health strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And how we would, when we were in college, just go. We went like almost, maybe not 2 years.
Don't say
like,
it out loud.
I know, but like we went like a year and a half.
It was probably 2 years.
Least.
It was probably.
With like, we went like, because we would do little checkups of like, you know, happy birthday, Merry Christmas, you know, whatever. But yeah, with like actually talking on the phone, like unprompted. Yeah, it was years. But there was never any issue. We would just both pick up right where we left off. Yeah. Because we just know like, yeah, we're just both going through stuff and are living different lives. And, you know, it's not super practical for us to.
And I think a lot of that is about trust too, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, like if I need something, I knew you'd be there like immediately. You know what I mean? So
Same.
It's like I didn't really have to worry about, I don't know. There's just, I feel like with some people, I have some relationships where and even when we've been friends, I mean, because obviously in the past 12 years, we've gone through different things with different people and different scenarios. And we've still known each other, but for whatever reason with you, I've never felt like, oh my God, like John's going to forget about me, or like, oh my God, like, I don't know. Like there's been people where I've been worried, like, but I think that also just goes to say like, not everyone is truly your friend at the end of the day. Right. Like if I have to, or if you're going to get mad at me for living my own life or being busy and being an adult, like, is it worth it?
Yeah, it's not
is it worth it?
You want to keep around, you know? And then, but it would always be, and what would always prompt us to like come back together and talk about stuff would be like relationship stuff that we were going through.
Yeah.
You know, I would text you, I'd be going through some either breakup or like pre-breakup phase where I'm just like, I don't think this is good for me. I don't think this is good for my health. And we would like talk it out, and you know, you would use a lot of medical terms to validate me, and I would use a lot of loving non-scientific terms to validate you.
This is
and
still true.
It's still true. And yeah, and I think what's really interesting, and this is something I know we wanted to get into today, is the way that, you know, we have that trust with each other, to not talk for literally years and then just come back together, and but that's not always the case in relationships, is it?
No, it's not. And I feel like, everybody I feel like I have a small inner circle. Like, there's only a very limited amount of people that I'm very, very close with and I share a lot of things with. And I feel like in the past couple of years, as I've been learning more about my own issues, I've learned about the way I've treated others in the process. And that's been big for me, because I, for a while, wasn't understanding in certain situations, like, why is this person like pulling away, or why is this happening, or how come this person doesn't understand this? And it's like, I didn't even understand myself, So it's like, how could I understand what someone else was feeling? Not that I could ever, but how can I understand what's going on in a relationship with somebody if I can't even understand like my own mental health issues? So
yeah, it's tough. That's a tough one.
Yeah. So
it's tricky because go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. So I don't know. I feel like we've both definitely been in these situations where we've been in relationships, and more like romantic relationships, where mental health just has played a major factor one way or another as to why it like works or does not work. And a lot of that for me on my end, something that I'm still very much trying to work on, is not being a problem solver. Which is hard because it's like obvious. It's like, yeah, let other people solve their problems, let other people do their things. But it's the fight that goes on in my brain when I see that someone is struggling with something that I just feel like, not that I have the tools in the sense where I could do it better than them, but like, were I in that situation, I know I need the outside help. And I just put myself there and think like, well, I like the idea of just not helping someone when you could help them, it drives me insane. Like, I just lose my mind. But not everyone wants that, and a lot of the time people don't want that. And that's what's really hard for me is I don't know, just dealing with the fact that like sometimes people are just gonna be going through shit and they need to get through it themselves. Even if you can help, even if you do have the tools, it's just not the same as them ultimately going through the journey themselves. And oh god, it's so hard. It's
definitely is
so hard to I don't know.
I think we all have, I mean, a big thing for me, so a little bit of background is like, me and my current fiance, we're getting married in September, have been together for 6 years, coming up on 6 years now. And that was interesting for me because he's someone who doesn't struggle with like mental health issues. And in the process of kind of helping him understand where I'm coming from, it's helped me understand where I'm coming from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you have to put it in terms that are easier to communicate, and then when you're finding those terms, it can be like, oh, like you hear it and then you're like, oh, and okay.
And in previous relationships, I've always kind of shut down rather than effectively communicating what I'm going through. And luckily Victor's someone who will remind me to communicate those facts. So he'll be like, he'll be like, what is actually happening? Like, just kind of grounding, when we're like just kind of heated about something, he'll be like, what is happening? Where is this coming from? What's going on? And I'm like, I need that though. I do, because then I actually have to stop for a second and be like, oh, this is why this is coming from here. And now we've gotten to a place where I can look at him and be like, okay, so this isn't you. This isn't anything you did, but here's what's bugging me, and here's why I think it's bugging me. And it's really helped our relationship get to the point where it is now, because we both can take a step back in moments of like arguments and be like, this is an insecurity for me. I've struggled with X, Y, and Z, and this is me trying to take control over something that I've experienced previously, even if it doesn't apply to the situation. So I don't know. I just think it's good to really learn, especially like we talked about last time, date yourself, right? Learn who you are, learn how you think, how you react in relationships, learn your love language because that is
Yeah.
shown in
Very, very
friendships
important.
too.
Yeah. The way
Um
it's important for you to understand how you give and receive love, and
right.
also how your partner or your friend, whoever you're having the relationship with, how they give and perceive love.
Mhm.
Because if you're not on the same page about that, it doesn't have to be the same, but there needs to be communication.
Absolutely. And I think there's also a healthy way to understand that versus a not so healthy way to understand
Yeah.
that, because I think I've recognized in my current relationship what our love languages are and communicating when something there's compromise too. And Victor and I use
Right.
the phrase halfway happy, which I think we got from Stranger Things. I don't know if you've ever
I actually haven't watched Stranger
you
Things.
haven't? Oh,
I
that's a
know. I
whole nother
know.
thing.
I know.
We'll have to talk about that some other
We'll get into
time.
that at some point.
But that someone said that in one of the episodes a long time ago, and he was like, "Oh, I like that."
Okay.
And so sometimes when we're having a fight and we need to like compromise on something, I'll look at him, and once we kind of settle, I'm like, "Halfway happy? Are we halfway happy? Like, does this work?
It's cute.
Is this something that like works for us?" But in the past, I haven't done that. Like, I've had relationships, especially with friends, that I've come to almost rely on for like validation because I didn't understand that we had different ways of showing, I care
Yeah.
about you. And
Yeah.
some people just aren't like, they're not, well, nobody's going to be the same as I am or you are, but they're
No
not
one
the
could possibly be
same.
the same as us.
No, but they're not the same in the way that they communicate or they show love. And from
Yeah.
somebody who has a history of bad things, that's for another episode.
Another different one.
Yeah, I just feel like I've had a hard time accepting different types of love languages because I'm like, no,
Sure.
this is not how I want to receive love. This is not like, I feel like I'm not being validated. I feel like this isn't something that's right for me. Like this doesn't feel
Yeah.
right. Do you even care about me? Do you love me? Do you want me to be around? And then I start spiraling because I start getting anxious. So I'm like, oh my God, this person hates me.
Yeah.
I literally saw them 5 hours ago, but now I want to see them again because I want to make sure everything's okay. And then it's just like constant, like spinning out of control, which is what I was trying to say earlier too with like you. I've never felt that way with you. I've always known like very solid that no matter what, at the end of the day, if I need John, he's gonna be here.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely same.
And I once had a friend in college, and we were very close. And he and I spent like almost every single day together, almost to like a codependent type relationship where it was constant like, oh, what are you doing after work? Or what are you doing after school? Or what are you doing after class? Or what are you doing here? Do you want to go do this? Like every second of every day, it was almost like we were together. And I almost started to rely on the fact that like when we were together, that was good and that felt great and I enjoyed being around him. And then it was too much for him. And he didn't effectively communicate him, no fault of his own, but there wasn't communication about that, right? There was no,
Right.
like
Yeah.
in the moment, there was no, this is too much for me, or I'm struggling with the way that we're always together and I just whatever. Like if you can just communicate that there, even if it hurts at first, at least there was some sort of boundaries, but neither one of us had that ability to communicate that at the time because I don't think either one of us really realized what was happening in that relationship. So, and what was happening is we were becoming codependent, right? We were becoming this thing where it was like people would just see like, oh, like they're a thing, like they're friends, they're always together, they've never been separated, like if you see one of them, the other one's there, type of a thing. And that just wasn't healthy for either one of us. But the lack of communication and the lack of understanding on both of our parts is what kind of destroyed that relationship. And when he moved away because school was over, I was, and that was his way of like breaking things off essentially with me and being like, I've had enough. Like there's a lot going on. Granted, I was also going through a bunch of mental health stuff on my own and had to learn about myself in the process of that. And he wasn't really in a place to understand really what I was going through. Granted, he was very supportive the entire time, but he didn't really understand that exactly how I wasn't acting this way because I was trying to be obnoxious or be controlling or be like, oh, I want to be with you. I want you to be around. I like, why aren't we together? Why didn't you ask me to go here? Why didn't you ask me to go over here with you? Whatever it was. It was more so me being like, I'm anxious. I'm sad. You make me feel good. And when you're not around, I don't feel good because you make me feel good. And that's
Yeah.
how I was with a couple other friends in college too. It was like anybody who remotely cared or was someone who was around often, I attached myself to because I was trying to just pull in those feelings of security and happiness, and I didn't understand what was happening, and there was no communication because I just couldn't figure it out. So it
Yeah.
was
And
it was a journey. It was
it
a
was
journey.
a journey, and I would get periodically updated on the journey as it
Yes.
went on. And yeah, it was tough to watch you go through that.
Yeah.
And you were talking about like codependency, and I think that's a major thing that I think we touched on a little bit last time. But just the idea, it comes down to the idea of dating yourself,
Yep.
where the reason why it's important to do so is because if you're going to get past or work through mental health issues, you need to become comfortable in your brain. It's
Right.
like, you've got a closet. You need to clean that closet. If you're afraid to go into the closet, you are never going to be able to clean it.
Right.
And so, but then you come across these people, I don't know, who have these other closets that are incredibly clean and well organized, and you just think, oh, great. So if I'm with them, they have a clean closet, and that's ultimately the problem solved. I can store my stuff in there. I didn't really think of this metaphor through.
It's
But
fine. I get what you're trying to say.
ultimately the point being, you start to rely on these other people because you're like, yeah, oh, I feel good when I'm with you. And that feels like a solution. That feels like
Yes.
an improvement. Or like even just a break. It's just a break from being like in your own brain and like trapped inside with your thoughts. Because when you're with someone else, you don't have to sit alone with them. You
Right.
don't have to let them like stir. And it's the worst part of the journey. But step one is becoming comfortable in your brain and just learning how to sit with yourself. Which comes back to meditation. It comes back to bringing yourself on dates. And one of the words that we talked about before doing this podcast that I thought I invented, but I did not invent, is co-independency. The difference between codependency and co-independency, where you are two or more individual people living your lives on the same path together, like you want to be doing with your best friends and with your significant others. You still have that sense of identity and that sense of self, and knowing, it comes down to like decisions, I feel like, and this is me not in a relationship currently, so I don't know, take this with a grain of salt, but I think true co-independency can result in even something like, oh, where do you want to go for dinner? And just being able to think of ideas of what you want to eat rather than being reliant on the other person for figuring that out, or too nervous that you'll like upset the other person
Yes.
with your idea. And just that trust that, I can just say what I'm feeling. I can say, like, I can do what I want to do, and I can trust that the other person will either engage in that activity or respect me for doing that activity, but keep their space. And both of those are fine.
Right.
I also had a relationship or two in college that I was all up in my mind, brain, head about. And I remember talking through a lot of that stuff with you, where going back to, feeling responsible for helping others, and also tying it into communication. I think a big thing for me is knowing, or at least trusting, feeling like the person on the other end of the relationship, friendship, whatever, is going to communicate with me and tell me when they need help. And I've found, and also recently I've found, like, in some of my friendships, that if I don't feel like the other person will tell me if they need help, that's when I really can't handle my shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I really am just like, I'm just trying to read their mind and jump on every opportunity and be like, okay, how are you feeling about this? How is this? It becomes a puzzle to figure
Right.
out, which is wrong
Yeah.
and unfair. Um, but it's because for me, I need that communication. I think just because of in college, the number of relationships I had with people where someone wouldn't tell me that they need help, and then just feeling an incredible sense of guilt, or like preemptive guilt, for not having anticipated the help that they needed. Um, that's not to say I didn't, I'm very lucky to not have like lost anyone in a more dramatic sense, but you know, similar feelings,
Right.
without getting too into it, uh,
And
have been felt.
I think that's something too that I've learned is, so after this friend like left, I felt as if I was grieving that person because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, they're not here anymore. Like, and in a sense, you are grieving that person, and that sucks. Like grieving
Yeah.
somebody who's still alive. Like I've done my fair
Yeah.
share of grieving people who have passed, but grieving someone who's alive and just won't respond to you is torture. And not to say that the way that that person went about it was the right way, in the sense that they just kind of like disappeared from my life. Like that sucks. Like that was very difficult for me. But to also understand that that person was probably also very hurt by the whole situation and just didn't know how to communicate, that hurts me more. And it took me
Yeah.
like years. Like, I mean, probably like 2 years ago was when I finally stopped reaching out, stopped like saying, hey, happy birthday, like every year. Because even on those times where I'd say happy birthday, like he wasn't responding and I was just digging into it. I was like making it worse. I'm like, why isn't this person responding to me? Like, I care. Like, I care about this person. We've been through a lot together. But what I failed to realize is definitely that I've hurt them too in the process, and we haven't been able to communicate that. And he was, in a sense, communicating with me that this is too much. I can't handle this. I'm creating a boundary. And I just wasn't
Yeah.
expecting, like, I wasn't, not that I wasn't expecting it, I guess I wasn't accepting it. I was like, I don't want it. Like, don't you care about me? Which I still do think to this day he does care about me, definitely. Like, I'm still somebody who had an impact on his life at some point. He had a huge impact on mine. He actually helped me through a lot of stuff I was going through medically at the time. Um, and so he'll always have like a place in my heart. And I think I'm finally in a place where I feel like, okay, like I have to let it go. Like, I just have to let it go. It hasn't changed. It's been X amount of years, and that's hard. That's been a
Yeah.
hard reality to come to, and being able to freely admit that, especially in something that I'm about to release on the internet, is big for me.
Yeah, man.
um
It's not
so
easy.
it's just been, it's just such an important thing to, like you were saying earlier, to understand yourself and to date yourself and to really kind of learn who you are. Because I mean, for the rest of our lives we're going to have relationships with people, and if we can't manage ourselves, we're not going to be able to efficiently manage these relationships and allow them to grow into something that essentially that somehow we've maintained. you know
Yeah.
um
That's us, the pinnacle of relationships.
yeah, and I think it's a hard part of life. It's definitely something that we all kind
Yeah.
of have to go through in one way or another. How extreme it is depends on whatever, but
I mean, it also depends on, every perspective is different too, like you were saying, because like on one hand, one thing that I need from others, well, like I was saying, is for them to communicate, is for them to tell me what's going on. But then also, you and I are very similar in that, like, despite being very emotional people, we're very logical communicators, which is like, when thoughts are communicated, they are very like factual. Even if it's
yes.
about emotional things, it's very factual. And I think we both could benefit probably from taking the lack of communication as a form of communication.
Yeah.
Which is, not to say that it's necessarily the best way for that to be done, but that doesn't matter if they're trying to communicate, but their way of communicating is
not communicating.
With distance.
Yes.
It needs to be read too.
Yeah. And honestly, like it hurts me to think about how much I pushed it, because I was like, I was just like not understanding what was going on. Like I really was struggling to figure out what I did, but it's nothing necessarily that I specifically did. It was just him being like, I'm done. I'm done. There's been a lot. And I'm so grateful again for what he's helped me with. But when I think back onto that, he didn't have to do any of that. And granted, I was going through it and it was a lot for me, and I was putting it on him. I was like, I need help with this. I'm struggling. Like, this is happening. Like I'm sad about this. I don't know. I'm anxious. I'm having like a panic attack. Like I can't even handle that myself. And now I'm just like throwing it all at him. And he responded so gracefully, and he did a phenomenal job handling me. But you really do have to remember that like that's a lot for any one person to handle, and to put that on somebody else, like with what they're going through at the time, it's just, I can only imagine how difficult that was for him. And I also come back to thinking about how when I want space, I do the same thing. I mean, I don't ghost anybody for years. Just kidding.
That little bit of shit
just kidding. Actually, I've never ghosted anybody for years. But anyway, but I won't communicate. Like, I won't,
Yeah, no,
So I had to do that. No, just kidding.
No, I love it.
I didn't mean for it to come out the way that it did, and then it came out, and I was like,
so glad it came out the way it did. There's a truth to it.
There's always a truth to the words we say. I had a psychologist in high school. My favorite thing ever that he ever told me, and he was like, he's like, listen, Emily, I don't care what anybody says to you. I want you to remember what they do say has some meaning to them. It really does. Whatever comes out of our mouth has meaning.
Yeah, that's good.
So
yeah.
I live by that.
Yeah.
Like if somebody says something that feels wrong, or I was like, oh, they didn't mean it, but they said it. So there was some truth to them in that. And I think that's important to remember, especially in relationships as well.
It could also mean something else other than what they said.
Right.
I think it's important to say, like, someone could say something and you could be like, oh, that rubbed me the wrong way. There might be some truth to what they're saying, but it also very likely might be about something else.
Yes.
It might just mean like, oh, okay, we have tension about something else going on that has now carried into this. It's just as important to recognize it, because now it's like, okay, they didn't mean that. They didn't mean to say it like that, but there's something we got to talk about. Clearly.
Definitely.
Just communicate, just talk,
Yeah.
just talk to each other, just yell at your friends.
Don't
yell at your
because
friends.
if you yell at me, I might cry. So
yeah, no. Don't yell at Emily, please. Yell at me. That's fine.
If you ghost me, I'll bother you till the end of time. But
there we go. Yeah, ghost Emily.
But don't yell at me.
Yell at me about ghosting Emily.
There you go.
And I think that'd be healthy.
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. But I also just want to say really quickly about all that, and then kind of wrap up that conversation and move on to the next. But okay. With the non-communication being communication, I do want to just say that I've done that, and I think it's important to do that to be able to set those boundaries for yourself. If somebody's too much, because at some point, not that you don't love the person or care about the person, but there's times where you just don't have the mental energy to deal with somebody or their situation, and that's okay. And to not have to sit there and listen to it or like put it on yourself, because I'm definitely someone that as soon as you start telling me your problems, I'm like, oh my God, how can I, like you said, how can I help this person?
Right.
What can I do? Like, I need to find some way to help, like, or figure something out, or I'm just taking it on. I'm just thinking about it. And I'm like, that really sucks for this person. Like, I feel bad. And sometimes that's too much. And it's okay to not respond. And it's also okay to maybe respond later or whatever feels right. But if you don't want to respond to something because you're not in a place, or you don't want to pick up the phone when somebody calls, don't pick up the phone. And
it's okay.
It doesn't matter if
You're
it's
a
a
person
friend.
too.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a friend or a family member. If you don't want to answer the phone, don't answer the phone. Set those boundaries. It's something that I'm really working on right now. and move forward, because you need to take care of yourself, and you can't do that if you
It's
give in to everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that, because that's also, I don't think I realized it until you brought that up, but that's also something that I'm working on with like just my friendships is, I'll recognize, like, I just get into these anxiety spirals of, especially, so quick little backstory. I have a group of friends that I know, but the audience doesn't, that I've been friends with for 7-8 years now. We've all been together. We've been living together. We lived together, the three guys and I, for about 5 years. And now Gabby has joined us and was part of our quarantine. And yeah, super tight friend group. Since quarantine, we have moved to different spaces just for space reasons, not for emotional reasons. We just couldn't share 5 people to one refrigerator and one bathroom anymore. It was too much. And I definitely felt this real sense of anxiety that, like, oh my God, if I don't like clock my hours with everyone, if I don't like respond constantly, if I don't like, I definitely felt the pressure of like, they're going to think I don't want to be friends with them. They're going to think that the move was this whole emotionally motivated thing. And I just put my pressure, or I put that pressure on myself to an extent that like I didn't realize I was doing. And then more recently, I've kind of realized, as like one of the guys will like be like, hey, what are you up to later? And sometimes I'm just like, I just can't respond right now. I'm just so in my head. I just need some me time. I just can't talk to anyone right now. And so I don't. And then later I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry. I just was not in a place. And every single time, without fail, whoever it is in my close group will be like, oh yeah, no, that's good. And I'm glad you didn't like, it's not good, but I'm glad you didn't respond. Like, that's totally fine. I ended up doing my own thing anyways. And it's just, it goes back to that trust and communication where it's like, if there's a problem, I know they're going to tell me. Yes. And also we all have mental health issues. Yeah. And so if you're just like, hey, I'm having mental health issues and I got to do my thing. I'm very lucky to have surrounded myself by a group of friends where every single one of them, every single time is going to be like, oh my God, if you're stressed, you need to take care of yourself. Yes. Don't you dare put your health and sanity second to like playing a game together. And I don't actually feel there's been like any distance in our relationships. We still see each other like most days. We're always talking, still in group chats. They also, we live 15 minutes away from each other. Right. Like a 15-minute walk away from each other. So it's pretty easy. It's not that dramatic, but yeah, it's been a real growing year in that sense of valuing my independence and making sure others respect my independence. Yeah. And also, recognizing that that's never actually been an issue, and that's been something I've been in my own head about. But
I've done the same thing. I can totally understand where you're coming from with that, because I've done the exact same thing. But to be honest, sometimes I pull it back to like when I really need to recenter myself about that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, me and Michaela have been friends since we've been 5. And just because we haven't spent a lot of time together lately doesn't mean that she hates me. And Michaela and I have been worse than you and I have been. Like, there was a point where Michaela and I didn't talk. I mean, periodically, obviously, like very short, like, oh my God, this happened. Are you okay? That type of a thing, But like actually have a conversation for probably about 4 years. That was like the longest stretch of time. But I've known Michaela. So I'm not the worst one. No. And I've known Michaela since I've been 5 years old. And she is still like one of my absolute best friends. And same thing with Tori, and same thing with you. And I always kind of like just come back to it and I think about it and I'm like, these people I've known forever who really like know me and love me and care about me. Like if I'm not going to talk to them for a while, I still know that they love me and care about me. And it's okay to not respond or say, hey, I know we haven't hung out in a while, but today's been really rough for me, or I had a very busy week and I just can't think about this right now. And I just need a day. They all, because they love me and respect me and care about me and want me to be well, are like, I totally get it. Yeah, they might be disappointed because it's like, oh, that sucks. I kind of was looking forward to it or whatever. But they understand ultimately that like, hey, Emily's busy. Emily has a life of her own. if I wasn't feeling well, Emily wouldn't care if I canceled, you know, or didn't want to do this. So I think, you know, it's also important to realize those type of people you have in your life versus the people who are like, oh, you never hang out with me, or, you know, like you're always too busy for me, because that's not it. That's not it. We can love those people from like a distance.
We can love those
but
people
set
from a healthy distance.
those boundaries.
You just gotta set boundaries, and you gotta be surrounded by people who respect those boundaries.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, you know, it's you gotta respect your own boundaries, and that's the end of it. I didn't have a real tangent to follow that up on.
Yeah.
Man, we're getting into it today. This is way better than therapy. And it costs so much less since you're paying for the Riverside subscription.
Yeah, so I feel like we're at a good place. I mean, to kind of wrap it up for the day.
That was a good little chat about communication, relationships. What did we learn today?
All right. We have learned date yourself again.
Date yourself again. Every time.
Every time.
Date yourself.
That should be the first one every time. It will be. Date yourself. Don't smother people.
Don't smother people if you can help it.
If you can help it. But, you know, try your best.
Really put the effort in there.
That's more so what I've learned. That doesn't necessarily apply to everyone else.
Yeah.
Love yourself.
Love yourself.
Set those boundaries.
Communicate. Talk to each other.
And drink your water.
Drink your water.
That's, again, a reminder for myself.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I got to drink some water.
Yeah, see? I mean,
it's just...
Someone's going to hear that and be like, oh, my God, it's been 2 days since I've drank water.
A little dehydration, a little rehydration.
Yeah. You never know. You can save a life by telling people to drink some water.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
if
true.
you balance it with coffee, it results in just really manic focus.
So maybe don't do that.
No, it's great. I think it's a good thing.
Oh, okay, cool. So anyway.
Oh, yikes.
Thank you for listening.
I'm sorry for my behavior.
It's okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Such a time.
We love you.
We love you so much. My God, can't get over it.
Goodbye, friends.
Bye, everyone.